This is the Almost Daily Zencast. Hello and namaste. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. I am your humble host, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. Let's get started. Hello and namaste. Welcome to another episode of the Almost Daily Zencast. I am your quirky, exotic, unorthodox, unusual rapscallion of a co-host without a co-host. The one, the only, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. Today, I wish I had it queued up, and you know what? That's the one thing that was bugging me. Maybe I can do it live right now. I'm gonna play, if I can pull in the thing without messing up. Where are you? There you are. I'm gonna play the intro, and I might as well load the outro to one of my other segments. Called Unauthorized and Explicit Readings. Hopefully, y'all are at least visually familiar with that, because I crank one out every once in a while. But the reason I'm going to play it is because I want to read from a book. And every time I read from a book on my podcast, I'm like, I really would just want to play the disclaimer from the intro to Unauthorized and Explicit Readings. So, I suppose whenever I do venture to read from a book, especially a book that I admire and respect, and that I do not intend maliciously to violate any of its commercial rights of, I'm just going to go ahead and play the intro. And if I have time later, I'll make a quickier, snappier, shorter version of it. But for now, here it is. The intro to Unauthorized and Explicit Readings, with the aforementioned disclaimer that for those of you who've never heard it before, just in case you've never heard it, I'd like you to take a listen to it now before I read to you from this book I'm going to read to you from. And then I'm going to humbly invite you to join me in a meditation. Crazy! And then we're going to talk about Goddess Rising. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Here we go. Warning. This podcast contains material that may or may not be considered appropriate for the average Trumptopian household. Listen at your own risk to Unauthorized and Explicit Reading. Disclaimer. All rights to literature referenced are retained by appropriate entities, and no infringement is intended. The reading of any and all literary materials referenced herein is done expressly for the altruistic purpose of genuinely facilitating the species-wide pineal gland activating, third eye opening, transcendent spiritual enlightenment of all of humanity. Any and all opinions expressed herein are exclusively those of the imaginary talk show host, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. And now, brace yourselves for Unauthorized and Explicit Reading. I really love that intro, so it's extra fun and kind of silly and absurd for me to play it in the middle of another show that I already played an intro to. But regardless of that absurdity, and for those of you who've heard that a bunch of times, I apologize, but it will, for the time being, continue to be the opening theme song to Unauthorized and Explicit Readings. And I promise to create a snappier version of it, because I think I can hear it. I can sense the beats where I could slice it and like fudge it together and make it sound okay. Given my rusty but still functional sound design skills, thanks to my very half-assed and incomplete theater education. But I digress. The reason I played that disclaimer is expressly for anybody new that is just tuning in to this episode as the first or second or third episode and they have yet to hear it. Although that doesn't make sense because I'm planning an Unauthorized and Explicit Readings segment next. Well, I just fucked that up. But oh well. Anyways, I just want to play it for the absurdity of it, and also, honestly, genuinely, for the intellectual disclaimer. Having said that, I now, genuinely and humbly, and authentically, invite you to join me very briefly in a short meditation. Now, if you're driving, do not close your eyes. And maybe I do think that meditation can be safely achieved while driving. But if you've never done it before, maybe this is not the time to start doing it if you happen to be driving or you happen to be in a rush. Maybe hit pause on this episode if you happen to be driving. Move on to another episode. Come back to this one when you're not driving. And you know you've got at least 3 minutes that you can sit in silence from this point in the podcast on. Okay. So for future reference, if you're going to start over, you just want to fast forward to like 7:45. And then you'll be right here. So I'm going to read to you, before we meditate together for a hot minute, literally and figuratively, I'm going to read to you from one of my personal, top 10 favorite books about meditation at all. And it's self-evident why it has become, over the years, one of my all-time favorite top 10 books of meditation at all. And although I have yet to find a reason to disqualify it from that list, who knows, sometime in the future, either that list will get overcrowded by other, better, more powerful books or whatever. But this seems like a pretty solid, approachable, readable, dependable book that gives good, qualified, and apparently, to all my ability to kind of gently look into it, seemingly well-researched guidance. This book, without further ado, is called Meditation, the Complete Guide. That title's got some chutzpah, right? That's like, boom. That's like the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Bam! Do not panic. This is the guide to the galaxy. Meditation, the Complete Guide. I do believe in dramatic readings, even for non-dramatic texts sometimes. Although, forgive me for getting loud. And this is a meditation show, and I start getting all theatery and crazy. This book's subtitle is Techniques from East and West to Calm the Mind, Heal the Body, and Enrich the Spirit. Revised and updated. And apparently the authors are Patricia Monaghan and Eleanor G. Viereck. And this is one of those awesome moments of synchronistic beauty that I honestly didn't anticipate and hadn't thought ahead of time and just coalesced. I shit you not. The snippet that I want to share with you from Insight Timer, genuine and authentic endorsement here, folks. If you're exploring meditation for the first time, or even if you're a seasoned meditator and you want something to shake your shit up because you're getting a little rusty in the meditation time practice, and you haven't worked with a meditation app before, Insight Timer, in my humble opinion, after reviewing from an LG phone, is my current phone, and other sort of Android platform phones, like decent, solid, middle-of-the-road Android phones that weren't too crazy expensive, they weren't too stupid cheap. This is a good one, it's solid, and it's also on Mac. It's even on desktop, which rocks my universe. It's the only app, high five to them, it's the only app I've found, having recently adopted, returned to, because I have worked with Mac before professionally, but that was like forever ago. But having returned to Mac semi-professionally for the purposes of my amateur creative artistic life, I was impressed. And I haven't gone to go thoroughly dig out this list yet, but there seems to be very few apps that exist in a consistent and strong and free with a subscription level that's reasonable and awesome, that's found on Google or like the Google App Store, and on the iPhone App Store, and on the iPad App Store, and on the iMac Desktop App Store. For those not familiar with Mac, they've recently sort of, counterintuitively to most, including myself, that would have thought that they would want a high level of integration there, they've kind of created a sort of different lanes with their app stores on iMac, iPad, iPhone, but with an openness for crossover. But they definitely bifurcated them, so they're not all the same store, which one would have thought, perhaps. But I digress. This isn't an episode about Mac. I'm just saying, and this should be impressive, even to people who aren't into Mac, to the best of my ability to discern, and I haven't done a thorough, beta test approach, but I'm gonna, because I think it'll be fun, and maybe I'll do a whole episode about it. But right now, there's a version of it on my LG G7 ThinQ of the Insight Timer. There's a version of it on my iPad, 6th gen, which is the last new one before the new ones, and on my iMac 5K, whatever the heck the new thing's called. It's a mid-level of the newest ones before the new ones came out, or coming out, whatever it is. And I haven't come, I have, honestly, it should be obvious, I have an interest in apps like that, right? The only other apps that, off the top of my head, that I know can do that, although I haven't paid because they don't offer it to you on the free level, and I haven't checked to see if my account, my profile migrates on all three, but for Insight Timer, but I'm suspecting it probably does. But the other ones I can think of off the top of my head that I know for a fact do that or claim to do that is Evernote. Evernote does that. Evernote exists on all three, like it's in the Google app stores for, I think, most Google apps. It's on PC, it's on iPad, it's on iMac. It's on any PC. And Evernote, for those of you who don't know, it's like the most well-established, in my humble opinion, solid, sort of clean, minimalist, well-organized, easily searchable of the writing tools out there. And there's a new sort of growing enthusiasm for sort of interestingly featured writing environment apps. And that's great because a bunch of new people are getting into app making, especially on Mac side, because Mac is trying to make coding for apps something everybody can pick up and learn if they want to. And then, like you can pick up and learn how to make candles and sell them on Etsy. Well, you should be able to pick up and learn a Mac and an iPad and learn how to code using Playgrounds and XTools, and within X, however long it takes you to fucking teach yourself, sell your own apps on the App Store, right? So it's like a revolution. It's the new, that's what, and they're not marketing it this way, but that's personally what I think is the real innovation behind what Mac is doing next, what Apple is trying to do next. Despite all the negative shit you can talk about their devices and some of the choices they've made around them in the last 3 or 4 years, I think they're trying to bring a ubiquitousness to the entry of creativity and coding to young people, because they have a huge, massive education program. But I digress. Insight Timer, I'm impressed. It just hit me because I hadn't really thought about it before. But boom, although I don't use them on all 3 platforms, there it is. And it works really well on the Google app. And I know that it works fine on the iPad because I have used that one before. And I haven't opened it up on the desktop yet. But returning. The interesting bit of synchronicity I was going to connect before I got sidetracked on all that app talk, trying to be an influencer. And the reason I did that is because, disclaimer, I want you to, honestly and genuinely, because I'm giving you these endorsements, and we're about to do a little meditation, right? That's where we're supposed to be going. I want you to check out Beautiful Chorus. They are, I think, also on YouTube. They might even also be on Facebook. I've humbly I have humbly previously on the Almost Daily Zencast, we have meditated to this track before, and some intuition tells me to go ahead and do it again. And they're a beautiful chorus, and again, I could be wrong, but my impression appears to be, and continues to be, that they are currently seeming to be configured, at least on the tracks available through Insight Timer, in all-female voice. And here's the synchronicity. I'm getting to it, folks. I didn't derail this time. So we're going to hear the beautiful chorus sing the opening. We're going to do 1 minute worth of meditation. After I stop spiraling out of control and rambling to you about a bunch of different things and get to the cool synchronicity, and that is that the book that I wasn't planning on reading from until I really sat down and went, oh yeah, that book. And maybe because I haven't done like a how-to serious episode in a while, and that I mean to include this in unauthorized and explicit readings anyways, and I don't think I've read from it before, I'm going to read from it now because I really love this section, and it's short. So the synchronicity is Patricia Monaghan and Eleanor G. Viereck, forgive me, to everybody at all times throughout my life, in this life frame, in this time frame, and in all others. I'm one of those people that butchers people's names and then immediately forgets them. Like, I couldn't say the name, the 2 names I just read again. It's not that I don't care. It's not that I'm impaired in any way, I don't think. It's just that it's the way it works. I have to look at that word again. I couldn't have remembered it was a Patricia or an Eleanor. Even just Patricia and Eleanor. Not looking at the book. Right now I can, because I just said Patricia and Eleanor a bunch of times. But you get my point. The synchronicity is 2 women. The choir, 2 women. I'm going to read 3 sets of 3 quotes. And here's where the synchronicity falls apart a little bit, tragically. Unfortunately, I wish it weren't so. But the first book, and I'm not going to read those right now. That's the thing I'm planning for unauthorized and explicit readings, is a random selection of 3 blurbs from these 3 books. 3 sets of 3. And the first book that's on the pile is The History of God by Karen Armstrong. Strong feminine writer, woman writer. The other 2 books are my 2 classic standard pillars that sit with Karen Armstrong. Gary Zukav, Dancing Willie Masters, and Alan Watts, The Way of Zen. Believe me, I really wish that the Gary Zukav book about physics and Buddhist monks talking what do you call people who are physicists? Yes, thank you. Take me a second. Gotta trick myself into saying the word when I can't remember it. Gary Zukav's book about, I almost said physicians, which would have been totally wrong. Gary Zukov's book, no offense, Gary Zukov, should you ever get around to listening to this, that would be cool, by the way, if Gary Zukov listened to this, or Alan Watts. He can't. He died a long time ago. But he probably has an estate or a foundation or something and some relatives and some great-grandkids or something laying around. or some great-great-grandkids, or some nephews, right? And Karen Armstrong, if I'm not mistaken, she's still alive. I don't know about Gary Zukov one way or the other, but I'm assuming he's still alive, because this book ain't that old. I digress. Be neat if they heard this, but I don't mean to offend any of them. It would have been much cooler synchronicity if maybe the physics book, Dancing Willie Masters, was written by, Sarah Zimmerman. Something. To give it a weird, interesting, I don't know where that's from, Zukov kind of name. I just made a Zimmerman. But it would have been neat if there was like two women and a guy talking about what we're going to talk about in that episode, whatever that turns out to be, because I'm going to pick random ones. We're going to pick it in this show, right here, in Goddess Rising. And then we're going to read it later. I'll record it later this evening, I presume. Or perhaps tomorrow. Maybe I'll do a little thing, let it simmer. But the synchronicity that struck me was that I didn't remember, and I certainly wasn't thinking or planning, that this book about meditation would be written by two women. And I think that's beautiful, and that's great. Because after we meditate, I'm going to ramble at you for way too long about those two words, Goddess Rising. But I wanted to share with you from Meditation, the Complete Guide, techniques from east and west to calm the mind, heal the body, and enrich the spirit, by Patricia Monaghan and Eleanor G. Vierick. From page 77, chapter Mantra, entitled Mantra. Harvard University professor, Harvard University professor Herbert Benson recognizes that meditation on religious words is the most healing of all mantra techniques. According to Benson, the physical benefits of reciting mantras as a meditative practice include 1. Lower pulse rate. 2. Lower blood pressure. 3. A sense of relaxation known as the relaxation response. And 4. A slower breath rate. He goes on to list several mental benefits, including more awareness of the mind and the senses, more awareness of one's true identity as a spiritual being, instead of identifying with the body or the job or the race or the religion or others such I'm inserting the word ideological. Why am I saying he? What a terrible feminist am I? Yeah, by the way, I have a whole episode coming in the works for later in the summer about myself and those kinds of isms, but I made myself think about it now. You know why? Because I think when I did pick up this book, I thought that I had some false masculine. What's the word? It's like white, not white pride, but what? Anyways, I had some bias, unfortunate bias, to always say he. And one could attribute it to academia, and the default of the generic is a masculine oppression of that gender signifier in narrative writing. But that's a whole nother point. These two lovely women list mental benefits. Of course, they were quoting a guy. Maybe that's why I said he. Maybe that makes it less inadvertently misogynistically biased of me, because they were referencing the work of Herbert Benson. Okay, I digress. Other things on this list of traits: more awareness and synchronization with the oversoul or universal energy, supreme truth, or whatever term you would like to use to represent that, as represented by those words, if you might call it a word cloud. And other points: more inner peacefulness, less stress, the unfolding of one's full potential, the enlivening of one's inner intelligence of the body, and the development of higher states of consciousness, more orderliness, dynamism, and creativity within the meditator, which results in greater effectiveness and success in daily life. Other details, don't want to read the whole effing chapter. That was just not even half a page. But then they give you some really awesome practical advice that I think I've always rambled around, but I don't know if I've ever really hit this nail as cleanly on the head. There are basically 3 requirements of a meditation practice, and those remain the same in most form or styles of meditation. You need a quiet place. Second, you need a comfortable and stable posture. And third, you need an open and receptive mind. The 4th requirement of a meditation practice is a meditation device of some sort. This chapter is exploring mantras, so in this chapter they're going to talk about mantras, I suspect. In mantra meditations, this device is a sound or a word. In most primary yogic meditations, this is the word Aum, A-U-M. And for those of you interested in jumping directly to working with that, YouTube Sadhguru chants Aum 100 and something times. If you start typing in Sadhguru Aum, you should find it. There's one where and the best one, there's a couple of different versions, but the best one starts with him in his typical sort of very to the point, slightly tongue-in-cheek, comical, poking fun at everybody, explanation, he's just very on point and pointy with his explanations. He explains how to correctly pronounce Om. I'll leave it to him to get into it. But go look that up. Go YouTube that shit. I want that available on Insight Timer. So if anybody from Insight Timer ends up checking out this episode, wish list right there. Please add that Aum recording. I've made a total underground fan fiction. I'm a fanboy of Sadhguru in that respectful, honoring his truth and his legal rights. But I've remixed it a couple of times, and it's something I've tabled. It's a little mini project I tabled with some audio design stuff I want to tinker with, but I'm going to come back to it this summer as part of something else, because I'm going to then embed it in some stories that I'm writing, because I want it to be a device within my fictional literature that some DJ made this crazy dance mix breakdown of Sadhguru's chanting. Anyways, I digress. Too many things. Got triggered by the word Aum. In most primary yogic meditations, this is the word Aum, and it is spelled here in the book, A-U-M, said to be the primal sound of the world's creation. Red pin with some string into a not too recent past episode where I talk about my deep thoughts on how we have been convinced or fooled or tricked into misusing the phrase God's creation, or God's green creation. But I won't go into that tirade now because I've already done it in some past episode. Go track that shit down. Some traditions require you to participate in meditation training, and only then, as you are deemed ready, are you given a mantra. Usually this word or syllable is to be kept secret. Even if shared, though, it would probably be meaningless to listeners. If you do not have a mantra provided by a teacher or a short prayer from your personal spiritual tradition, you could not do better than to follow the counsel of Vietnamese Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh. I've never been quite sure how to pronounce his name either. Please forgive me, Thich Nhat Hanh? Thich Nhat Hanh? And he is, the following is attributed to him. When you inhale, repeat the phrase, breathe in, I calm my body. When you exhale, repeat the phrase, breathing out, I smile. At any other inhalation, say, dwelling in the present moment. And then as you exhale, say, I know this is a wonderful moment. That's pretty excellent mantra advice. One of my all-time favorite advices comes from a documentary whose title I can't quite remember, but it was explicitly about Buddha and Buddhism, and it's the one with that actor who's known for that horrible, controversial rumor from way back in the day. And I have Gary Marshall's face and name stuck instead of the actual actor I'm trying to think of. Forgive me, Gary Marshall. I'm not thinking of you. I'm not trying to reference you or conflate you with the person I'm thinking of. It's meaningless because he didn't say it. A woman whose name I also do not have available to me right this second, either in my memory or in my records or notes, in that documentary, whose title totally eludes me, said, you can meditate, there was some discussion previously in the scene before about what is the best meditation technique or, something like that. And she said, you couldn't go wrong. You couldn't really do much better than, hello, Buddha, hello, Buddha, hello, Buddha, hello, Buddha, hello, Buddha. Either in some rhythmic pattern in relationship to your breathing, or as you're walking or riding your bicycle or driving stuck in freeway traffic, I think, she said, as long as you do it safely, just the people that you see. Hello, Buddha. I think she might have been filming in some big metropolitan city like New York or something. And, she might have been presuming, because then they cut to a shot of big metropolitan city and lots of people, just massive amounts of people walking down the street. And, it's a beautiful deep focus shot, so you get people from all over the field of view, coming and going and walking in this huge flow. And then, think about it. Hello, Buddha. Hello, Buddha. Hello, Buddha. Anyways, I want to close this intrusion into this delightful book, and then we will continue with the actual meditation I want to humbly invite you to join me in participating. At the end of this section here, which has only been about a page and a half, they offer a checklist for practice. And I think that it's delightful and wonderful and is universal in its approach and can be something that should be brought along to any attempt or experiment or exploration of any other form or technique of meditation, of which this book has many, many, many kinds, my friends. It does want to be the, quote, complete guide. And it's one of the reasons it's a book there aren't very many books on my bookshelves that I have not fully read from cover to cover yet. And this book is that intense and chock full of information that I'm like, oh my God, I couldn't just sit and read it from cover to cover. It would blow my mind. But I want to read it more like an encyclopedia and dip into it as we tinker and explore with meditation, which I warned you a long time ago is part of this podcast. All right. So, according to our dear friends Patricia and Eleanor, this is a universal checklist for practice. It doesn't say universal. I added that word. Forgive me. Be sure that you are in a safe, quiet place. So I'd presume, interjecting here, that they may not approve of my, and I think of it for myself as mildly controversial, suggestion that, according to Alan Watts, which I'd love to nail that particular quote magically for tomorrow's 3 sets of 3, but I don't know that I will, and I'm not going to go looking for it. But somewhere, and I can never get this quote right from memory, but somewhere in The Way of Zen, Alan Watts says, just about any activity, especially if it can be considered a bit mundane or repetitive, can be approached in such a way that it is, instead of the same mundane activity, it is meditation. Now, I butchered that. That wasn't even a paraphrasing. That was just me telling you what I understood, not so much what he said. But that's my problem, right? Like, I'm a synthesizer, so then I don't have direct quotes. I can't quote Shakespeare, but I sure as hell can give you my opinion about what happens in the plays. But I digress. That's a whole nother conversation. Checklist for practice. Be sure that you are in a safe place. In a safe, quiet place. I would also interject and add that nature, something that approaches nature, that at least has natural elements, even if it is man-made and highly cultivated, or whatever you call it, the right word is, not cultivated, but highly manicured. As long as it's natural-like, right? It's got to be safe and quietish, but some natural sounds are cool. That's me interjecting like crazy. Sorry. 2, or next bullet point: sit and practice at the same time every day, even if it is only for 5 minutes. I totally agree with that. And so do many others who write or talk about meditation, is that you need sort of like some anchor meditation sessions. And then as you get really comfortable with those, like, I'm always going to meditate first thing in the morning, right? Like, first thing, I get up, I go to the bathroom, because you really can't meditate first thing in the morning. Everybody knows you got to go tap the keg, drop the kids off at the pool, and then you're ready. Forgive me, that was gross. That was juvenile of me. But I digress. But anchor sessions, like, it's not a horrible idea to meditate relatively early in your day before you really get going. Maybe after you've showered and done your other morning rituals. Whatever makes sense to you, right? But that once you figure out where that is, that you try to nail that consistently. And maybe once you got the morning one down pretty good, this is not from their book, this is me adding my own interjection. It doesn't hurt, especially if you're doing, let's say you're doing a 2-minute meditation every day. And you got it into your morning. Boom, you're doing 2 minutes. You know, and maybe your program is to up it by a minute in a couple of weeks or whatever. It's variations all over the place, right? But I'm adding to it for your contemplation, for your consideration, that if you can handle that, once you got to that place, you know, and that's what, there's really classic ancient advice. Start with a minute, and then once a minute becomes something you're comfortable with, get the 3, get the 5. So start with 1, anchor meditation, first thing in the morning, or start first thing at night, right before bed. That's often a lot easier for people, less stressful, because you don't feel like you're in a rush, or like it might endanger you getting to work on time, etc., etc. But once you nailed the evening meditation, or let's say you're a really weird person and meditating at lunch for some reason is super awesomely easiest of all. Once you got that one down, and it's part of your routine, and it's not something that you're juggling, play with adding another one. Don't make it a big fucking stressful deal. Don't make it a big, like, just start and meditate. You know how to do it, and you've gotten comfortable, and you're only doing 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 minutes, right? And I think that's an extension of that brings some meaningful value to what Alan Watts might have meant in the fullest depths of his intention, of like that any action, ultimately, any repeatable, repetitive, mundane action of our everyday lives can be, if approached correctly, a form of contemplative meditation instead of just regular, plain old ordinary activity. And that's one way to get around to it, right? Like to incorporate 2 or 3 minutes here and or there, and then the next thing you know, every time you sit at the grocery line in the grocery store, you're doing a little tiny meditation. And that's not a horrible idea, right? If meditation's sort of like the gateway drug to the salvation that we've been ignoring. Forgive me. I've returned to this book, this beautiful, very inspiring book. Their next bullet point, after be sure that you are in a safe and quiet place and sit and practice at the same time every day, even if it is for only 5 minutes, is do not expect anything or try to do anything. That sounds crazy, because everyone's first question is, what do you do? How do you meditate? How do you meditate is a question that is begging instruction. And here, right smack dab in the middle of their checklist, not their instruction, their checklist for preparing. Do not expect anything or try to do anything. Sounds crazy, but it actually makes sense if you know anything about Zen, which hopefully you do by now. And if you don't, well, buckle in. We're going to get into it in past episodes and in future episodes, so you are going to get it one way or another. And it's not about, hey, real quick, my universal disclaimer. I am not here to judge anybody. I'm not here to impose my will on anybody. I'm not here to tell you that you're wrong. I'm not here to tell you that you need to believe what I'm telling or saying. And I'm not here to say believe in me or believe in the words coming out of my mouth. I'm just sharing them for you to consider and contemplate. You do you. But thank you for joining me in considering and contemplating these things. All right, so the next bullet point. Remember that a passive attitude enhances letting go. That's interesting. And I'll have to let that simmer in the back of my mind for a hot minute. But the next one is, if you forget your mantra and begin daydreaming, be gentle with yourself and gently return to your practice. Notice each experience that arises. This is the final bullet point. Notice each experience that arises with a detached awareness. And to collaborate with them, like if I was on a team and if we had written this book together as a trifecta of 2 women and 1 man, which is sort of like, professionally speaking, and I mean this sincerely and truly because of too many reasons to get into now, especially since this episode was supposed to be about Goddess Rising, and I haven't even gotten to that subject matter yet. I'm going to have to break this up into a 2-parter because I really want to keep these things under an hour. I'm already at 42 minutes. But professionally speaking, I consider myself a hyper-collaborative writer. And for reasons way too long-winded to get into now, I feel professionally, artistically, that my ideal professional team partners would be 2 women. Like, you know how you are watching a movie and you get to the part on the credits where it's like written by and it's 3 people. I see some power there. I see some magic, I'm not a numerologist, but there's something powerful. And there's something powerful if you just think about it in terms of energy. If you're a little bit into Tesla's stuff, you might get where I'm going with it, although maybe Tesla didn't overtly discuss energy the way I might. I think our approaches might overlap a little bit, although he's way more geniuser than me. I'm not claiming to be Tesla-level genius. Although I most certainly do have a crazy, wild, fractal, holographic repository of a mythological, comic book-ish, multiverse of stories that I need to tell and write down. But that's a whole nother problem. I would add to this list, and I say this humbly and with respect and admiration and love, but if I had written this with the 2 of them in some sort of like collaborative trifecta, I would have suggested during that writing session that to this list we would add right at the end, forgiveness, 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 or some other expression like that. That no matter what happens, no matter what you do, no matter how difficult it might appear, as you prepare, because this is your like checklist, right? Like I'm getting ready to then initiate meditation. Begin with forgiveness. Follow through the meditation with forgiveness. End the meditation with forgiveness. Forgiveness, forgiveness, forgiveness. Like they say in real estate. Location, location, location. Forgiveness. In meditation, I think that one of the secret ingredients that often gets, overshadowed by technical stuff is forgiveness, forgiveness, forgiveness. But I don't say that as a critique. I'm just having a braingasm about meditation. For your information, this book is so interestingly well written that right here at the bottom of page 70, 9, right? We started on page 77. And I started like paraphrasing stuff in the middle of section of oh, you know what? I should go back up into something. Contemporary uses is a chapter title or a sub-chapter title here. I don't know. There's a whole section about Sanskrits and how you pronounce Om and why, and then other stuff and how they get. Oh, it's really cool. But then it goes to contemporary uses. Many mantras have no meaning in ordinary language. This suggests that they are abracadabra words. Now, look up abracadabra in a serious, like reliable, book that deals with the etymology, or is it entomology? I ask that every time I try to use that word correctly. It's because for those of you who may not remember or be aware right off the top of your heads, I just said 2 words, and one of them is the study of gross, disgusting bugs that would make me freak the fuck out if I had to look at them in real life. And the other is a study of the origin and root meanings of words. And they're really, really, really closely related. And for some reason, my conceptual ADHD and dyslexia makes me flip them around and get confused about which one's which. But I digress. Let us continue with the book. This suggests that they are abracadabra words. Look up that word. It's got some interesting roots. Or incantations. Words that do not refer to any external object, but that are believed to have intrinsic power. They are not the same as prayers or spells, for their power is not in affecting specific changes in the environment, but in changing consciousness. Mantras are many-sided instruments that can be understood in various ways. Some mantras elicit a mystical state of consciousness. Mystical perception is a special kind of awareness that is marked by a greater clarity than ordinary sense perception. Many mantras are relaxing and soothing and serve to lessen suffering. These mantras are very meaningful to the person who uses them to dispel ignorance and realize release from suffering. Some have argued that the use of Sanskrit words is not appropriate to those who are not Indian or Hindu. Author Andre Padoux, I'm not sure, it's Padous. No idea how to pronounce that. Padoux. How would the French pronounce that? Because it sounds French, because it's got an E with a tilde. Andre Padoux, for instance, believes that it is not legitimate to transfer mantras from their Indian source because we cannot really adopt the entire Indian cultural context in which they are grounded. If we use them, it will be within the philosophical framework of our own traditional notions concerning the powers of speech, which differ from Indian notions. And forgive me for going on about this. A, I find it fascinating, and I've got some opinions on it. And then we're going to do this meditation. And then we're going to talk about what the whole actual point of today's show is supposed to be, Goddess Rising. But I see a lot of important things, and I'm being impulsively motivated to continue reading. However, mantras may prove useful for improving mental concentration or mystical life. And that's where we get to Harvard University, Professor Herbert Benson. I thought it was interesting to kind of round out the whole thing. And then I started saying, this book is so interestingly well written that, here on page 79, to close that open loop that I left dangling, at the end of the bullet list, right, where I would have suggested forgiveness, is a section called resources. And I want to dip into this because this is where it gets increasingly fascinating, because you realize that, a book can make wild claims and assertions, but some books not only make interesting, strong claims and bold assertions, but then back it up with lots of reference material to go investigate, which leaves lots of fertile ground for you to read and compare all these different voices and come to your own conclusions about stuff and things. And I think it's really cool and awesome that this book has that right there at the end of a section instead of way at the back of a book. There is an index, and there is probably let's see what else. There is end of the book, at the end of all the normal chapter, a meditation on meditation is the title of the chapter that is labeled the conclusion. I'm going to line that one up for a future episode, folks. Woohoo. Ooh. This is beautiful. It'd be also cool if it was a woman that they were quoting here, but there's a quote under the title at the end of this book that we're referencing. And it's from Francis of Assisi, who there's a wealth of material to read, and I'm desperately looking to unbox a book of mine about his life, but I think it may have gotten tossed, because it may have gotten waterlogged or damaged or something. I have a terribly sad, tragic image of that book that I'm trying to remember the title of, being all bent out of shape and gross, and that it grieves my soul, it pains my heart, because I'm a big, adamant book lover. But I digress. Here's this book from St. Francis of Assisi. They don't sanctify, they don't include the saint. He's just Francis of Assisi, which I respect, actually, because I'm a rejector of the Catholic Church as well, as an institution. Not so much, remember, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, not so much that which they've managed to preserve despite their agenda to prevent us from understanding it, because they've preserved a lot of interesting information the Catholic Church has. Here's the quote. When there is peace and meditation, there is neither anxiety nor death. That's St. Francis of Assisi, a Roman Catholic saint who believes in Jesus and all the other blah-de-blah. Anyways, come back to page 79, resources. This is what's cool, and this is what I wanted to end my little blathering about this book and actually get to the meditation and end this part 1 episode. Resources. Ashley Farrand Thomas, Healing Mantras, New York, Ballantine, publisher, 1999. Findlay Ellison Banks, Mantras, Kavisata, Speech as Performative in the Rigveda, in Mantra, edited by Harvey P. Alper, pages 15 to 47, Albany, New York State University of New York Press, 1989. Fraley P. Davies, Mantra, Yoga, and Primal Sound, Secret of Seed, Bija Mantras, Twin Lakes, Lotus Press, 2010. I want to pause on that right there. Earlier, the authors quoted respectfully, and I think fairly, another author, academic, that indicated that it may be inappropriate to lift mantras from Hindu culture and apply them as a non-Hindu. And that arguably, theoretically, if one extended that logic, that would be true in other directions, that it would be incorrect for me as a Mexican American to pull from Zen or whatever. But of course, that would make this book useless, right? Because it's the complete guide of meditation, and it's broken up by worldwide traditions, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, how it's organized. And also, as probably, and I'm surprised they didn't make more reference directly from this in here, or maybe they did earlier. Maybe this is where they got the stuff about Om. For example, at the top of page 77, more material I did not read earlier that I will now, despite the fact that you're not supposed to read so much in these kinds of reading, quote, snippet bits. But fuck the man, right? These guys are talking about life-saving stuff here. This is like, do you want to heal humanity and save the world, or what? Or do we want to worry about lawyers? I'd like to vote for healing humanity and not worrying about the lawyers. Most mantras are in Sanskrit. Continuing from a bunch of other things. One of the more widely known mantras is Aum, or Om. It is a primal sound that is pronounced A-O-M. It is one of the letters of the Sanskrit alphabet, all of which may be regarded as mantras. That's a whole episode right there. Put a pin in that. Because Sanskrit's not the only ancient language where each letter could literally be considered a mantra. And I wish to insert a really weird, fun sidebar here that Stan Tenen had put together a book that was more widely and readily available like this book, because he's done some brilliant research into the ancient primordial fire symbol language of the ancient Hebrews, the alphabet, right? And I think it can be said both of the ancient Hebrew alphabet and the ancient Aramaic alphabet, that their shapes and their sounds are curious and interesting, and that they may too also be considered an alphabet that is made up of mantras. The American English alphabet is not. Right? Most modern post-industrial language, and because all language is common use. So all language is going to evolve and either elevate itself or dumb itself down. And there are out there, for those who may or may not realize, many theories about the overt, oppressive, and malicious, nefarious dumbing down of all languages, tearing us away from Latin, which was considered by many academics of the ancient times the height of the culmination of the academic synthesis of the ancient languages into a new, awesome, brilliant proto-language for all academia, right? Like some posited that, I think, kind of, or something akin to that. Something phrased differently, probably, but definitely ancient languages. The ancient Hebrew, the ancient Aramaic, the ancient, what's that other one? With the really cone-shaped letters. Some of those things, their letters may be, like they just said, considered the alphabet itself. Each individual letter in the alphabet may be regarded as mantras. That's a bold, wild, crazy statement, especially when I connect a few dots to something in the references section here. Although the mantra, I continue with this section quite brutally here, disregarding all advice to keep readings short. Although the mantra is extensively used and occupies an important place in the spiritual exercises of Hinduism and Buddhism, it is also known elsewhere. An example is the Jesus Prayer used within the Eastern Orthodox Church. See chapter 30. Interesting reference, right? In Islam, a related technique is the repetition of God's name, or of a holy word, or holy formula, either audibly or inaudibly, to achieve a state of recollection. In the Sufi tradition, which is not the same as Islam as it gets fear-mongered, in the Sufi tradition, this is called the dakir, or the dikir. Dikir? Horrible, right? Sorry. Dhikr. Don't know how to pronounce that. Please forgive me for butchering it. Goes on to the part where we read about how they don't have meaning. This suggests they might be abracadabra words, right? Other books in the resources section, but I want to circle back. Oberhammer Gerhard, or Gerhard Oberhammer, because this is actually a citation list, so it's last name and then first name. The title is The Use of Mantra in Yogic Meditation, the Testimony of the Pasupata in Mantra, edited by Harvey P. Alper in 2000, pages 204 to 223, Albany, New York State, University of New York Press, back from 1989. Padu André, there's where we get that reference to that guy. André Padu, conclusion, mantras, what are they? ? It's a very French title. In mantra, It's an article in Mantra, edited by Harvey P. Alpert, page 295 to 318, in Albany, New York State, New York City, blah, 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 1989. All right? Paul Russell, The Yoga of Sound, Tapping for the Hidden Power of Music and Chant, published by Novato, California New World Library, 2006. Swami Sivananda Radha. I'm flipping that name around so that it can be read correctly, so that it's not misunderstood. But it is Radha, Swami Sivananda. Mantras, Words of Power, published by Kootenai, BC, Timeless Books, 2005. Thach Nhat Hanh, Being Peace. Great title. Being Peace. Published from California's Parallax Press in 1996. Also Thich Nhat Hanh, The Long Road Turns to Joy, A Guide to Walking Meditation, Berkeley, California, Parallax Press, 1996. Kenneth G. Zisk, Mantra in Ayurveda, A Study of the Use of Magical Religious Speech in Ancient Indian Medicine, published in the magazine Mantra, pages 123 to 143, University of New York Press, 1989. Did you notice a few things in common there? Despite Andre Padu saying, maybe you shouldn't borrow phrasings and mantras from the Hindu and use it if you're not Hindu, which is fair. It's a fair thing to say. One shouldn't do it, especially if there's really secret or powerful mantras, or that require a lot of training, or they're advanced mantras, whatever. It's probably wise to not just hijack it if you're doing it without thoughtful investigation into the context, into whatever training might be required, etc. But beyond that, and in counterpoint, because in a way I sort of almost don't want to agree as quoted in that book, but I'd have to go and read a lot of dear Andre Padu's work to get a fuller sense of his meaning and why he gives that warning. But I digress. Did you notice this trend in the titles? Right? Healing mantras, speech as performed, mantra kavisata, right? Speech as performative in the Rig Veda. As performative, speech. The subtitle is Speech as Performative. Like you might say, treating a certain liqueur as an aperitif, right? Like this is a performative in the Rig Veda. Mantra, yoga, and primal sound. Secret of seed, bija mantras. And the yoga of sound, right? Words of power. Where else do we see that kind of language? In the Judeo-Christian tradition, God uses the word, which is often, curiously, and in my opinion, mistranslated into law, which then becomes a hard, rigid thing that you must be oppressed by and like it, instead of dialogue that you can have, or a sound that you can also connect to. And what I'm trying to get at and round up with here is that mantras power, the power of mantras, in my humble opinion, based on my own personal research beyond the scope of just this book and beyond that of just the books on that list, some of which I've read before or read snippets from before, some of which I've never heard of before, etc. My own personal investigation into it has come to the conclusion that the real power there is sound. The most powerful meditation experiences I've ever had have been with sound. So both being bathed in it when it's being performed live by people who believe themselves to be healers. That shit is not just dope, and it's not just lit, it's not just woke. That shit is actually deeply, deeply powerful. And straight sober can put you into a strange, altered state that's beautiful and blissful and arguably totally natural and organic and inherent to your own human being body, right? And I digress that. And a reason that I spend so much time talking and rambling is because I really needed to cram that all in there. And also, get to this point, is that before we get to talking about Goddess Rising in part 2, I think I've talked about this before, but I want to share with you again, just because I think it's worth it. And we're finally going to do this meditation that I've been teasing this whole time. And cool enough, this meditation is only 1 minute long. So, don't fret. Don't stress. It's not going to take much longer than what we've got going on right now. And that's this meditation, in my humble opinion, is an example of that power of sound. The human voice is a powerful thing. People know that. A sweet, or a bittersweet, beautiful, dark, loving ballad of some kind from some musical from somewhere. You know, the human voice brings us to tears, right? We know this from art, from song. But when it comes to meditation and mantra, arguably, maybe even, I'm not sure, but we're working on it, right? Some of us are exploring this, such like this gorgeous sounding choir, beautiful chorus, and their meditation track that we're about to listen to, The Opening, which is available to you free on Insight Timer. Go check them out. Tap all the likes and the stars and write a review. And also get into meditating all the time and track recording it and sharing with the communities and stuff that are on there, because it's kind of cool in a genuine way. Cool. But, you know, here's what I'm getting at, right? Like sound, the resonance sound. Maybe those theories about English being a dumbing down and a separating away from the much smarter, more intense, more powerful languages, that might be true. But there might also be, if we connect conscious intent, which I've already done a big long ramble about, to sound, and find the right sounds, even in our dumbed down, regular, everyday, postmodern languages that we speak now, like English, and you know, postmodern, contemporary English, American English, and British English, and Mexican Spanish or Canadian English, which is slightly different than all the other ones, versus I said Mexican Spanish versus Spanish, or whatever. You get my point. And arguably, the abracadabra words like Aum, I'm assuring you, have resonant, inherent frequency power that is palpable and feelable. So, now, my friends, I keep breaking my own promise to try to knock these things out quick and short and fast and well organized. Instead, I go into longer and longer spirals. But here we are, my friends, finally. The peak moment of this part of this particular two-part series, mini segment thing about Goddess Rising. I humbly invite you to take on a challenge, which I think I've talked about before, but I want to talk about again and throw it out there. Let's meditate together on Insight Timer for 9 days. And then if you survive that, and you get that going, and that's becoming a good, new, interesting, healthy habit in your life, then let's go from 9 days to our next horizon goal, 9 weeks. Right? And then to 9 months. And let's meditate specifically. And the reason I'm talking about it today is because today's Mother's Day, right? It's still Mother's Day. It's 10:46 p.m. Sunday, May 12th. And I, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo, have really just derailed this episode. And yet, it's all going to tie in together nicely. Let's take up this challenge and meditate with this meditation track for 9 days. And I was going to, originally, the last time I talked about this 999 challenge, I think I just threw it out there at you guys listening, be like, go do it. But I think I'm going to do it as a special segment in and of itself. I'm going to make a little graphic, a little meme for it, the 999 meditation challenge with beautiful chorus, the opening. Here we go. So just 1 minute, right? And then as we progress through the 9 days, we might play the track a couple of other times. Or we might start with this track and then go to one of their other tracks, right? To kind of build our meditation muscles and get into, go from short sprints of meditation, short bursts of meditation, to easing into longer and longer, endurance meditation lengths. So tune in for that. But this is it. We're kicking it off right here. After all that ado, because that was much ado about nothing, quite literally, to what's that phrase? Not paraphrase, but to repurpose Shakespeare's brilliant title. Here we are. Let me clear out some of my jibber-jabbery energy, which I like to do with this Tibetan singing bowl that I got, which may or may not be authentic, but it sounds pretty to my ears. If it sounds horrible to you guys, please let me know. Maybe that didn't even register on the iPad. I'm not sure. But I just chimed that a couple times. Namaste, my friends. Please join me in sitting for 1 minute and allowing this beautiful sound to fill our minds and our hearts. Namaste. Thank you and namaste. As always, friends, remember I do that with respect and love and admiration. Go check out Insight Timer. Go check out Beautiful Chorus. Go check out this really awesome book, Meditation, the Complete Guide. And tune in to future episodes of Unauthorized and Explicit Readings. And also, hang tight. I'm gonna take a break and clear out some of this jibber-jabbery, too much chit-chatty energy that I've got going on. Really hone in my focus and come back for a bonus part 2 episode and actually talk about the title, subject, or theme, Goddess Rising. Although I'm sure some of you might imagine where this is going. But we're gonna, take some time to have one of these one-sided conversations where you listen to me ramble. And then in theory, because I haven't made it clear enough, you're supposed to post comments and stuff. If you are posting on platforms other than Sprecher.com, I'm currently not hip and or savvy enough to have notifications coming at me from those other platforms. So you'll forgive me if you've hey, but I have been asking questions and posting comments and la da da. And you're doing it over on Podcast Nation or TuneIn or what's one of the other ones I've submitted to that I've kind of forget about and don't often reference anymore. I forget, but I digress. Anyways, if you're doing that and I'm just not seeing them, let me know somehow. And here's how. Come to Sprecher.com/user/Mr. Zeppo. And then click on the little second tab under my profile that says episodes. Or conversely, because this works too, and is a little bit more direct in a way, I suppose, is Sprecher.com. And that's spelled funny, I know. And maybe that's one of the reasons people are a little hesitant to get there. But it's Spreaker, if I'm not mistaken. It's if I am correct in my understanding, it is the German word for speaker, Sprecher, which I should have a pretty good rolling German / Mexican Spanish rolling R there, but I totally don't right now. It sounded horrible. But I digress. You can go Sprecher.com/show, or is it shows, plural, / the Almost Daily Zencast. Or you can just go Sprecher.com and then get to Sprecher.com and then type in Mr. Zeppo or Almost Daily Zencast or Good Morning Trumptopia. And you should find my page. But you should just find me, Mr. Zeppo. And come post comments, follow, click. I need followers, guys. I know, petty, crazy, right? Why? Here's why. There's a deep spiritual calling to transcend our own boundaries. And we sort of need a rallying call. And I know there's a lot of people out there, and there's a lot of other people with podcasts, and a lot of people with YouTube channels, a lot of people with shows. But I'm speaking to them too. Hey, we all need to rally together and get past the hustle, right? Because it's great that some of us, that are people out there that are like us, that consider themselves spiritual in some fashion or another, that are doing, the spiritual hustle to try to build a spiritual career. And I'm not dissing that. But we have to work a little harder beyond that too, right? We have to put in a little extra effort above and beyond whatever that spiritual hustle jam is. And I digress. There's a lot to talk about. I've already spiraled way out of control at 78 minutes and 38 seconds when I looked up at the clock right then. Wowzers. Thanks for hanging in there with me. Thanks for tuning in. When I get around to rebooting this show this summer, I'll probably break episodes like this up into smaller chunks. But until then, thank you. Peace, love, grooviness, namaste. Go meditate. Thank you for meditating with me now. Stay tuned for the 999 Meditation Challenge. It's going to, it's a spin-off, a sub-segment of the Almost Daily Zencast. I have been, as always, your absent-minded, unorthodox, irrational, absurdist, totally genuine, do it out of love, giving a shit about the human species trying to prevent us from destroying ourselves and our Mother Nature, our Mother Earth. The one, the only, the crazy, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. That was the wrong outro. Gonna play the right outro.
And that is what I've got to say about that. As always, thank you kindly for listening. This has been the Almost Daily Zencast with your humble host, the incorrigible Mr. Zappa. Until next time, may peace, love, and grooviness blossom in your heart.
Mother Nature. She's not a place, you guys. She's real. She's alive. She is conscious. She is aware. She is calling out to us. She is speaking out to us through nature, through life itself, through our inner experience, and through the world around us. And I'm going to ramble at you more about it and read to you from other people who've got things to say about that in the next episode.